that was definitely a process of trying to figure out what is the best sound and what's the aesthetic we're going for. But certainly past the time during the pandemic, you can't go out and go to Chili's or something.
So this is all about you and your journey in music, really, and how you got to where you are now.
Sure.
I know you've got a lot of stuff going on. You're in many different worlds, so I'd love to chat with you, see how you get all this organized and
Sure.
how you were able to wear so many hats. But first off, tell me, where were you born and raised?
Right here in Atlanta.
Okay.
Not too far from you. I-85, right? Or
I'm not, dude. Honestly, I moved to Nashville like 6 months ago.
Gotcha.
I'm from San Diego originally. I lived in California my entire life, between San Diego and San Francisco. So I am so new to this. Like, my son and I took a trip to East Tennessee to go camping a couple weeks ago, and that's the most I've traveled here.
Yeah, well, if you keep going, you might make it down to Atlanta. I'd be happy to catch up with you in person.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, we cut into Georgia a little bit. Like, it was weird. We were going, I forgot the town what it's called, but they had like whitewater rafting and stuff. It was pretty far east, but like you cut into Georgia for like 10 minutes and then you cut back up into Tennessee. It was bizarre.
Yeah, well, you made it. You can fill it out on the map now that you've been to.
I've been to Georgia.
It counts.
So born in Atlanta, talk to me about growing up there.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. Atlanta during was a great place to be. The Olympics were here, and it's a very diverse town, as you know. Incredible musical influences. But I got to tell you, I got really struck. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I got struck when I was in just elementary school. I heard a Miles Davis recording, and I could not believe it. These people were improvising, and it sounded so good. I was like, how is this even possible? And I just sort of went into this very deep pilgrimage into learning about improvisational music, jazz music, and that took me into the blues and rock. And that was basically how I was struck with the bug of wanting to play music.
Okay.
And it was right here in Atlanta and in this area that I fell in love with music.
That's awesome. And jazz, because you're way into jazz. I mean, a great jazz bass player. Was bass the first instrument you learned?
Piano, then trumpet.
Oh, piano. Okay.
And then everyone,
wow.
Yeah, and then everyone was doing rock bands, and I was like, well, everyone's gonna need a bass player. So it was like supply and demand. So I just picked up the bass and fell in love with it because the low end, every music needs a bass, right? Classical, jazz, rock. If you don't have it, you feel like something's missing. And so I just picked it up in earnest, and it's allowed me to make friends with collaborate with everyone, because the bass is an accompanying instrument. So you're just there to support other people. And it's been a great way to play almost every art form, from polka to hip hop to everything.
Sure. That's awesome. So piano was first. Were you just put into it by your family, your parents?
Exactly. Went there, but I would play the piano. I would go to the course, and I would always like to learn the bass lines. And on the trumpet, I would always want to play the grooves. I was like, why don't I just play an instrument that grooves?
Sure.
So that's why I kept on gravitating towards it.
So you played bass. Did you play bass in the high school band?
Yeah. So
middle school.
Exactly. I was in the high school jazz band and loved it. And we participated in something called the Essentially Ellington Jazz Competition up in New York, put on by Jazz Lincoln Center. And it takes 15 top bands around the country, and they bring them to New York. We placed third one of the years we did it, and I got to meet Wynton Marsalis, who's a great jazz trumpet player, the head of Jazz Lincoln Center. We struck up a friendship. He invited me to tour with him, to go on the road with him.
Wow. And, he just spotted you and knew that you're a great player and wanted you to join him?
Yeah, he I think so. And I think we really struck it off. We had a great conversation, and then he's like how you played the bass. And then throughout college, and he came to where I was in college, and his band came, and I jammed with him there, and then I went on the road with him across the country. And it was a really great education to be learning from like one of the best, if not the best, jazz musicians today, about not just music, but life on the road and American culture. And that really informed Adam my philosophy regarding making music, about what kind of music to make, how to pick your projects, what kind of themes to explore,
Mm-hmm.
and to kind of to move forward. So that's kind of my music journey. And I still collaborate with a lot of those folks I met in that band and in Winton's orbit.
Wow. I mean, how do you have time? Not only that, you're in what, banking, and you've written a bunch of books, and not only that, but you have a bunch of Grammy Awards. Like, talk to me about how that all kind of, and you were serving the military too, didn't you?
I did. You know, I wrote this piece for Harvard Business Review a couple 3 or 4 years ago, and it called Why I Should Have More Than One Career. And it went gangbusters. It's like one of the most viral pieces. And it was just sort of natural to me. And the reason I say this is because sometimes some of the great artists of our time, you kind of have to work a second career until your music career starts flourishing. And people tend to hide that, or which everyone teach their own. But used in the right way, it can often create opportunities for you. What I mean by that is, after I graduated from college, I mean, I didn't really think I was going to be a professional jazz musician. I just happened to be okay at it. Mm-hmm. And so I went into a career in financial services and investment banking. And I was like, this is interesting. And all my friends who were jazz musicians were needing capital for their projects. So I was able to bring capital and talent together and start to make projects happen. And projects became bigger and bigger and bigger. And it wasn't just financial. I would start to play bass on the projects. I start to jam with them. And for example, I brought 40 people down to Cuba to make an album the day before Obama normalized relations with Cuba.
Whoa.
And we didn't know that was happening, but it was because I was able to identify capital from investors and friends and clients down to maybe an obscure jazz project, which they would have never supported. Mm-hmm. Project went on to win a Grammy. And so, but what I mean by that is, the project started to become more social and more political in a way, because then we can magnify it to get more press attention in a way. Mm-hmm. So we did this project a few years ago called American Dreamers, which we took 53 DACA recipients, and put them on an album and asked them to play the songs of America. Living in America, Immigrant Song, Led Zeppelin, all those great songs. And it was very emotional. These kids are being asked to leave the country, but they're playing the songs of America. Mm-hmm. Project went on to, with John DeVersa, who arranged the music, project went on to win 3 Grammys, and which was the second most awarded project of the 2018 Grammys. And, you know, I was able to leverage my financial career to support artists. And that's what's great about having a team, having an artist, having someone who's like in charge of the recording sessions, like just producing it. And so I got to a point where I was like producing 10, 15 albums a year. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to do this more full time. And so I launched out and made my media production company. And now I'm just producing records and films and launching my own music. So
books and got a lot going on, man.
Yeah.
Wow. It seems like, I love your mindset, because it's like, even when you chose the bass, it's like you chose the bass to accompany other artists and just kind of be, you know, engaged in that sense. And that's what you've done throughout your career, it sounds like. I mean, to be able to find capital gain for these projects and kind of be that glue that's holding the project together.
Yeah. You know, a lot of, especially in the music world, I'll just say this, most folks are artists, great. They're focused on their career, and they should be. But if you can move in this community and say, how can I be of service? You're going to meet a lot of people, because everyone needs a little bit of help probably, and so my way of moving into a room where I don't meet people is not what can I get from people, but what do you need? What are the challenges for your project? Is it finding talent? Is it writing? Is it capital? What is it? Let me try to be of service. And that's how I've thought of my music career, is just trying to be of service to folks. And the more you put the glow on other people, it comes back on you. It's just this kind of law of attraction. You put it out there and it comes back. And I've been very blessed to be able to have that philosophy. But that's also another reason to just make sure that, just for listeners, if you're in a rut or something, just ask, is there anyone else around here I can support or I can be helpful to? And when that happens, like, you'll be amazing the opportunities to start to illuminate.
Mm-hmm. That is fantastic. I love that you said artists always have to kind of, you know, when you're starting out, obviously,
Yeah.
kind of have to have a side hustle, a side gig. And 90% of the time you won't acknowledge that you have this side gig. It's like, yeah, I'm a guitar player in this band, but little do you know this person's also doing 10 other things. They're working at, you know, Chili's and doing this and that and to support what they want to do. But it's always like that's always the forefront.
Yeah, yeah. I actually write this newsletter where I profile people who have multiple careers, who are, you know, who work in university fundraising, but they're an improvisational actor on the side, or because the thing is, that's all of us. I mean, like maybe you want to accent something for your social media or something, but you know, there's Walt Whitman said, do I contradict myself? Yes, I contain multitudes. We have many multitudes within us. And so it's okay to share parts of your personality or parts of your job with the people that need to know. Maybe the people at work shouldn't know you're a performing artist because they may not think you're taking your job seriously, or the other way around. So I just embraced it. I try not to hide it. And but now I'm doing music. So I've sort of taken the journey.
Sure. So are you still involved in investment banking and or that world at all?
I left it a few years ago and banking, and I decided to kind of persist with making music and making films.
Wow. Wow. What was there a moment that made you like kind of clicked in you? Like, you know what, I need to get out of this and I need to put my focus elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I think mostly it was when we created this film called Fandango at the Wall, and we brought 100 musicians down to the border between U.S. and Mexico and filmed a concert, and then we sold the project to HBO, and
Wow.
yeah, and then to Televisa in Latin America. So I was like, you know what, maybe there's an opportunity to do this more full time and develop film properties and music properties and do this on a commercial basis. And so that's when I launched the record label and started doing identifying more film opportunities. So that's when that happened, when it became really a financial way to move forward and make sense for my career.
Wow. And you've written, I mean, you've worked on a ton of records, right? Like
Yeah.
70 plus albums you've credited on.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you have your own music out, and I was listening to this. It's like a musical about
Yeah,
let me find it. Yeah, the opera about the European debt crisis. Like, how involved? Tell me about that. Like, that's such a fascinating idea to kind of put into an opera.
Yeah, well, I don't know, a decade ago, I was sitting in my office, just watching the European debt crisis unfold on like Bloomberg, on Silent, and all these folks were kind of disagreeing with each other. And of course, it made sense that they were disagreeing. They're countries with different people, different civilizations, different music forms. And I thought, this is like an opera. Like, of course, this isn't going to end well for Greece. So I decided just to turn it into an opera, and wrote the libretto and co-wrote the music. And just, I mean, it took a while. We had to and it's called Angela's Ring, a European debt crisis opera, a review of a European debt crisis opera. And we wrote it the first way, and it was okay. It was a kind of classical and it was boring. And then I rewrote it to make it more interesting and funny and like jazzy. It's like a jazz opera and have a groove to it. And then we asked a lot of my friends in the news media, like Steve Leisman and Betty Lou, who were on TV reading, who were actual financial reporters, to come into the recording booth and to read financial news updates throughout the opera so it's sort of like a narration. I mean, it's kind of boring. You want to watch a financial news crisis opera? Not really, but you have these like little snippets of like what's happening in the story.
Right.
That are fictitious.
It kind of starts off with that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the record starts off that way.
Exactly. And that just sort of gives the listener an initial hook to be like, hey, this is what's happening in the story. It was a lot of fun to make it, and kind of a wackadoodle idea, but we did it, and it took like 5 or 6 years to make it happen. And now it's out in the world.
Yeah, you recently released it, right? This year?
Yeah, this year. Yeah, this year.
Wow. And was that something you had been working on, like alongside a million other things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we wrote it and recorded it, and then like kept on tinkering with it, and then we wanted some different singers. So Lucy Schaffer is cast as Angela Merkel, and Brandon Snook, who is Sarkozy. And there are moments that, like, I mean, I've certainly got a chuckle out of friends I used to work with, because it's, you know, it's high fun jazz with groove, and Steve Leisman is like jamming on the guitar, and it's just, I encourage people to check out a song or two. Follow Germany is my favorite single from that, because it's a groove song and sort of gets the point across. It's like Angela Merkel saying, follow Germany, trust democracy, but follow Germany. And she's like, just trust me, because like we're in charge here. And that was like one of the problems with the European, with the EU, is like, I don't think people in Athens want to follow what people in Berlin are saying, but that's how it's set up, because of the power structures of Europe.
Sure. Have you always been involved, or like fascinated with politics? It seems like a lot of the stuff you do is involved, like politically charged,
somewhat, because,
so to speak.
Yeah, somewhat, because I think it's a way of magnifying, and I do it through music. It's a way of magnifying interest on an issue, like the American Dreamers topic. The album we did, like, how many, you could write an op-ed saying, you know, let the dreamers stay, and that might get 1 million page views, or like people may read it if it's like a good op-ed. But if you make an album about it and tour it in red states, all of a sudden you're sitting in an audience of folks, and these dreamers are getting up and saying, you know, playing their hearts out, and you're connecting with people's hearts and minds. And I think that's the way you connect with people, through music, and through enlarging empathy through film and drama. So not all my music's political, but certainly the big signature projects have been. But they're not partisan. We're not telling people how to vote. We're not telling people what to think. We're just creating empathy through the music and saying, hey, you know what? Like, these are just kids who are really good at music, and they're talented, and you can form your own decision, but now you actually know who a dreamer is, rather than just reading about them in the news. So it's really exercises of empathy that I'm trying to manifest in these projects.
And I think that's the best way to go about it, obviously. I mean, instead of just trying to force something down someone's throat, like, you're never going to convince somebody to change their idea. And if you're just kind of speaking at them, but
Totally.
to like bring to light kind of what's going on and let them make their own decision on it, you're definitely, you know, and way better, sitting way better in that person's eyes.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're right, because people turn off. They're like, this is like just propaganda or something. It's like,
right, exactly.
Yeah, so we try to avoid that and just be like, hey, this is just music. Yeah, they're dreamers playing it, but you think you take what you want to take from it. So I always say, focus on, whenever I pick a project, I'm like, all right, let's pick the theme or the concept of the project. Because a lot of artists will just launch into the music, but I think pick the theme, and then create the music around it to support the theme, but make sure it's the best music you can make. So you can't sacrifice on that.
We have and speaking of that, you have a new project coming out here in a couple of weeks, right? And talk to me about the theme behind this. And it sounds like it's going to be a fantastic record.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my first pop EP called Threshold, and Threshold meaning that I'm launching something new, because I've been just collaborating with so many folks, and I decided, you know, as a result of the pandemic, guys, you know, Kabir, like, I'm going to try to put some more music out under my name and as an artist myself, because I've been spending so much time on Ableton and mixing records and just in the grind. And so I just worked with a great songwriter. Her name is Greer Baxter. She's an amazing singer-songwriter who writes great pop songs. So collaborate with her on a lot of these tunes, and I was able to just identify great musicians, artists, singers to sing on these tracks. The first one being somewhere between Fifth and Madison, Sonna Rele, who had a song in Cinderella. She's based in the UK. She's a great pop star, fantastic vocals. And we thought, why not feature a song? I used to live in New York, you know, I've moved since the pandemic, that highlights really a song that is about life in New York, somewhere between Fifth and Madison. And so all these 4 tracks are featuring terrific vocalists, women, people of color, collaborators who have collaborated with over many times. Song Wasted Pages features Alyssa Raghu, who was a finalist in American Idol.
Wow.
And Caliph, who was on the Dreamers record, who raps. And so just again talking about loss and love in our lives. There's a third track, which is I think an awesome track. It's called Llegara remix. I took a song from Emilio Solla, which it's called Llegara, which means come or arrive. And it was on his record Puertos, which won a Latin Grammy. So I took that one track, which is a beautiful track, and we remixed it. I remixed it. Manu Manzo sings the vocal. She's a Latin Grammy nominated artist. Danay Suarez does the rap. She's a Latin Grammy, I think, winner or multiple nominee. And that song is like hip hop, trap, Cuban meets like big band jazz all combined. And like people who've heard it, they're like, wow, this is like a fresh new sound. Yeah. So these are the types of songs. And again, threshold, the theme means like new threshold music. I'm just going to keep releasing these pop singles and hopefully putting out good music into the world for people to relate to.
I love that. And was this a project that started amidst the pandemic, or where were you at when COVID happened?
Yeah, I was actually in San Diego. I landed in San Diego and to come see you, and but for a film festival, and then I literally landed and I was like, it's really gonna happen. And then I got an email that was canceled, so then I took a flight back to back home, and then I was just parked and decided to make some music. What are we gonna do? When you quarantine creative people, they're gonna create. So we were all creating in isolation. So this project is definitely just born throughout the pandemic, and it's been interesting. I can't wait to get out there and maybe tour or perform this stuff. But it's definitely a pandemic baby.
Sure. Was it something that you had to facilitate over Zoom calls or internet, or I mean not internet, but email, or was it?
It was all that.
It was. So tell me about that. Was that?
Yeah, I mean, it was all that. It's bouncing tracks between folks, between Greer, who sent me the initial sound, and then of course me turning it into the MIDI and the waves and picking the sounds and then trying to figure out who's going to actually sing these things. So I had reached out to Alyssa, who I worked with on another track, and Caliph, who I knew, and then Manu Manzo and I had known each other, and we were working together on her album that's coming out. So it was just basically going to friends and collaborators saying, hey, and then working up vocal takes. It's hard to do vocal recording sessions virtually. I mean, there is technology, but the singers would send me their takes. I would give some guidance. They would send me their takes. Then I would have to sort of, work with them and pick the best take and then figure out the FX and figure out the levels. And that was definitely a process of trying to figure out what is the best sound and what's the aesthetic we're going for. But certainly past the time during the pandemic, you can't go out and go to Chili's or something.
Sure. Sponsored by Chili.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. We should look into them sponsoring this episode.
Well, that's cool. And obviously that's probably something you've never done before. Put a record together via the internet.
Yeah. It was different. I actually quite like it now because it's efficient. Who needs a studio these days? No, but I can't wait to get back in the studio. And I have done a couple of recording sessions in the studio during the pandemic. We were really careful about it, but it's something that I think is going to stay with this industry, because everyone now has a lot of people have a workflow about how to work in this way, to bounce tracks, to collaborate virtually. It's hard to do a band, right? For sure. But, music that's like quantized and that's like trap or on a grid is not so difficult to make happen virtually, I think.
And it's also something that can be done. Like you can work with somebody across the world now, right? You don't have to fly to Sweden to work with a producer. You just hop on Zoom at some time that works for both of you and
totally
and try to write a record.
Yeah, Sonna Rele is based in London, and so she we hopped on a Zoom or two and talked about it, and she is a great singer. So she kind of knew what to do, provided some guidance, and here's what I needed to record it at. Here's the levels, and here's that the BPM and so forth. And it worked out really well. But you're totally right. I'm working right now on a project with a couple Indian guys, and I think they live in New Delhi. And I'll work on a track, I'll send it, and like that night I'll get feedback, and it's like we're constantly someone's always up, right? They're around the world, and so this project is just like making momentum every day. That's another benefit of working virtually.
Sure. And the record's coming out in what, 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, on the 27th.
Okay.
It's called Threshold. It'll be available everywhere. A couple tracks are already out, pre-released, so you can listen to them. Somewhere Between Fifth and Madison is already out. Llegara remix is already out. I also worked with Thana Alexa, who's a great Grammy-nominated singer, on What's Your Name, which is just a fun dance song. Once you hear it, it's like hard to groove to it. So I'm excited for people to hear it. And if anyone wants to collaborate, just hit me up on Instagram or something. I'm happy to be of support to the community, and maybe
That's awesome.
we can collab on something.
That's really cool. And I'd imagine you're working with a handful of artists currently on other projects.
Yeah.
Seem like you're working quite a bit looking at your resume.
Yeah. I always got something going. We only pass this way once, as folks would say. So make the most of it. And
I like that.
Yeah, so I'm working on a bevy of things.
Very cool. And thank you so much for doing this, Kabir. It's been amazing. I have one more question for you.
Sure.
I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, I mean, start with where you are. You're really trying to be the ideal version of yourself. I know it's tough when you look at other people, their socials or their streams. You start thinking about the other people more than yourself. Just keep your focus on the craft, and be the best for it. You're in a race with yourself, not other people. And so the more you do that, I think the calmer you'll be. And then the second thing just is put the focus on someone else. As I said, I know you want to make it as an artist, but is there someone out in the industry you can help? Are you trying to connect with someone? If I look at my Instagram right now, 97% of the folks in my DMs are like, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Can you post this? Okay. But if you're actually to contact someone and say, hey, I want to do this for you, all of a sudden you're going to go to the top of that inbox. You're going to go top to top. If you start with active service, you want to get to know the producer, you want to get to know an artist, do something for them, be kind to them. All of a sudden, like, you're going to be on the radar as someone who's actually kind and generous. So I would say that's a fundamental way of moving ahead in your career, is access service and doing things for other people, because you'll get a reputation, and people want to do things for you.